This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 94 of the 1001 Movies podcast, based on the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. Today I'll be talking about the 1957 Ingmar Bergman classic, The Seventh Seal. Ingmar Bergman's feelings about religion and God must have been perplexing. His father was a strict Lutheran minister and would administer corporal punishments to Bergman for even the slightest misdemeanor. The household was strictly devout, but Bergman grew to admire the church itself, including the medieval paintings and stained glass. This was perhaps his inspiration for years later when he made The Seventh Seal. The film is about a knight named Antonius Block, played by Max von Sydow, who has returned to Sweden after the Crusades. He's accompanied by his squire, Jons. In the opening, Block meets Death on a beach, and the two of them begin playing a game of chess, a game which they pick up periodically throughout the film. Soon they come upon a pair of married actors, a philandering blacksmith and his wife, as well as a beautiful mute woman, most of whom accompany Block to his home and his wife. Once there, they are met by death, and the film concludes with their dancing images in silhouette, the dance of death. Bergman had just finished with Smiles of a Summer Night, listen to episode 55 for more on that, when he began writing The Seventh Seal. As the principal director of the Malmö Municipal Theater, he had access to a number of actors, some of which he used in previous films. The most prominent of these actors, however, was Max von Sydow. Von Sydow moved to Malmö in 1955, and he and Bergman established a rapport that would result in his being in a number of Bergman's plays and films. Von Sydow had already appeared in a handful of Swedish films, but it was The Seventh Seal that sealed his fate as one of the most famous Swedish actors of all times, with his stoic attitude, oblong faith, and resolute gaze. Although his most popular role is probably as the titular character in William Friedkin's The Exorcist, him as Block playing chess with death is one of the most iconic cinematic images. He died at 90 years old in 2020, less than a month from this recording. While famous filmmakers like Alfred Hitchcock preferred to storyboard their films meticulously beforehand, Bergman had a less technical approach, often filming scenes on sudden impulses. The film's final scene, featuring the Dance of Death, for instance, was filmed when Bergman saw the way the sun was striking the hilltop and decided to add the scene. Since some of the actors had already left the set, the members of the crew were asked to don their costumes and stand in for them. It took 10 minutes to film, and Bergman got it in the first take. Observant audiences will notice that the Dance of Death does not include everyone whom Death claimed at the knight's castle. His wife Karen is not among those claimed by Death. Whether or not this was intentional remains a mystery. To Bergman, he was just making a film during the summer with his friends. He didn't expect it, of course, to be one of the most famous Swedish films ever made, winning a jury special prize at the 1957 Cannes Film Festival. The movie is now a staple for teaching film, and is most commonly screened on campuses all over the world. Of course, this was just the beginning of Bergman's fruitful career, and later the same year he would make Wild Strawberries, which is the subject of a future episode. Now, what did I think of The Seventh Seal? This is the movie that almost broke the podcast. When a film is particularly good or bad, it's fun, or easy, to write about it. There is no question that The Seventh Seal is of historical importance, being one of the films that introduced most of the rest of the world to Swedish cinema. It's also an excellent bit of filmmaking. When I watched it the second time with the commentary by Bergman historian Peter Cowie and with the subtitles off, I was really impressed by cinematographer Gunnar Fischer's work. The film is not a slog, running at a brisk 97 minutes, and it's paced well enough. The problem that I have with it is that as a story, it's just really kind of lacking. When the Blu-ray popped out of the player at the end, I could only think, now, what the hell am I going to say about that? There are other films, as you know if you're a longtime listener, that are older and longer and slower that I've gushed about, but this time I just felt like I'd watched a film in school. Much has been written about The Seventh Seal, but perhaps the fascinating thing I've learned about the story is that Bergman liked to create characters that were complete opposites of others in the same story. The somber knight, for instance, is different than his squire, who enjoys a drink and a bit of a song now and then. The married pair of performers, Josef and Mia, who are young and joyful, are opposites of the blacksmith and his libidinous wife. The mute girl is a stark contradiction to the girl who is burned at the stake. Throughout the film, the knight travels the land, trying futilely to understand the meaning of life and death. His questions go unanswered. He asks a priest in confession, but the priest turns out to be death in disguise. He asks the woman about to be burned at the stake, but her response merely mocks his confusion. There is absolutely no doubt that Bergman's strict religious upbringing inspired parts of the film. There's a very well-done sequence involving a procession of people flagellating themselves, carrying statues of Christ, and led by an angry monk. Such processions did indeed occur in the Middle Ages and were sanctioned by the Pope, but they really just served to spread the Black Death from town to town. The flagellants may have been a callback to Bergman's suffering at the hands of his strict Lutheran father, and creating the scene may have been his purging of that experience. Now, it bears mentioning that the young couple and their baby boy escape death at the film's end, thanks to a diversion created by the knight. The couple is named Josef and Mia, and since Mia is the Swedish variation of Marie or Mary, it's obvious these people were meant to be the earthly parents of Christ and would go on living blissfully while the rest of the cast dies, without the exception, perhaps, of the knight's wife, who regularly reads scripture. All of these points are purely academic. Now, I've read articles in which critics have hailed Night of the Living Dead as George Romero's commentary on the Vietnam War and conflicts in America, when in reality, I think he and his friends just wanted to make a cool movie about zombies. I think the same is almost true of Bergman and The Seventh Seal, although Bergman clearly had more talent at this point than Romero did when he made his first film. It's a film about religion, about the knowledge that people of faith constantly struggle to get, and a rather depressing message that men's shortcomings will not save them in the end. All of that is great, but do I personally care, or did I enjoy it? Well, no. If you'd like to see this movie, I recommend some additional reading to accompany it, like Bergman's biography by Peter Cowie. That's not exactly a compliment to either the film or even you, dear listener, as it suggests I'm insulting your intelligence. Nevertheless, The Seventh Seal remains, for me, more of historical importance in late 1950s cinema than an enjoyable experience. Before I go, if you are a faithful listener, you will have noticed that this episode came quite a bit after the last one about the piano teacher. I have decided, rather than releasing a season of the podcast in 5 weekly episodes with months until the next season, I will drop the episodes as I make them. Hopefully, despite the lack of format, this will make the release of episodes less turgid than it seems. So tune in next time when I talk about 1979's The Tin Drum, directed by Volker Schlorndorff. In the meantime, you can email me any questions or comments at 1001moviespodcast@gmail.com or contact me on Twitter at 1001moviespc. Until next time, happy viewing.
And the Oscar goes to...
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 Hi, my name is Sean, and I am the co-host of the Best Picture podcast. Each season, my co-host Eric and I randomly select a year and talk about the Best Picture nominees of that year, with each episode dedicated to a different movie. Did the Best Picture really win? Were there any overlooked movies? Was anything nominated that probably shouldn't have been? Listen to us and find out. Look for us wherever you can get fine podcasts.